I just wanted to talk about this vivid dream that I had a few nights ago. It was the same night that I did LSD, actually. Like 2 days ago. First of all, I had an amazing day. Definitely the funnest day I've ever had in my whole life listening to music. Had a great time with my friend the whole day. But when I went to sleep, I had this dream that I went and got my keys cut at Ace Hardware. You know, cutting keys is where you get keys and you take them there and they clone the key. And I still drove my old Sierra Oldsmobile, which is a car I don't own anymore. And I went to Kmart, which doesn't exist anymore, down off of Broadway. It was like I went back in time, but I was still in this same age I am now. And I went to lock the door, and the key snapped off in the door lock. And I was like, oh, those motherfuckers, they burned my key out of pewter. Or they cut my key out of pewter instead of steel. So I went into Kmart to call a friend to pick me up. And as I was walking in there was aisles of zesty crackers, just like really fancy built patterns out of the cracker boxes. Like multiple aisles of that, like more crackers than the whole state would buy in like a week. Stacked like stories tall, like up to the ceiling too. And I walked through all those, and then I went down into a basement. There was stairs like right in the middle of the aisle that went down into a basement. And in the basement, this is where the dream gets interesting. There was an indoor swimming pool, a big one, and all lining the indoor swimming pool was pigs around the perimeter of the pool. In like lined up behind each other, so each area of pigs, they were like in rows like this. Perpendicular to the edges of the pools, and like 4 pigs in each one, and the pigs would willingly walk up. There was these razors that were like moving like this, and the pigs would just walk into those razors and get their throats sliced open and fall into the water, and the water was like 200 feet deep, somewhere between 2 and 300 feet deep, and it was clear water, perfectly clean, clear water, and there was lights in the corner of the pool. It was a rectangular shaped pool, and in each of the corners, the 90-degree corners, there was lights going down the corners, lighting up the inside of the water, and the pigs would swim down in the water like this, bleeding really like profusely out of their neck, and the blood would go like fast, it would be rushing out of their neck fast, and it would slow down like this, and then it would stop. So it'd probably be about a 10-second ordeal from when the blood was first flowing out. The first second would be when the blood's first flowing out of the pig's neck, and then the 10th second would be when the blood stopped. And it would stay like that. It'd be frozen. It'd be like if you dropped cold water out on a frozen surface of ice, how the water is liquid for a while and it like disperses quickly and then it slowly slows down and then it eventually freezes. That's what the blood was doing. And so in real time, the pig is bleeding out of the neck, and I can see, the first second of it as it's swimming down. And then, the second would be like 10 feet above it. The third would be like 20 feet above it. And then all the way up the surface of the water, 100 feet up, when it first fell in, would be frozen blood, fanned way out, like probably 10 feet. The blood would like fan out to 10 feet. and it would start changing colors, like these really psychedelic colors, reminded me of the cybersonic dimension when you're on LSD, when you close your eyes. And that pig would get all the way to the bottom. The pig would still be alive. Like, bleeding just didn't affect the pig. It didn't give a fuck about bleeding. It was like gleefully swimming down, bleeding profusely from the neck. And they'd get to the bottom, and then the next pig, you know, would be its turn after this pig made it all the way to the bottom, and do that in a different spot in the water. And, you know, make these, like, beautiful pattern in blood bleeding into the water, like, all the way down to the bottom. And I was just standing in there watching that, just like, holy shit, I was thinking this is really weird, because I recognized the swimming pool from the indoor rec center, Highlands Ranch Rec Center, but I also knew that I was in Kmart, and I remember Kmart from real life in the dream, and remembered that it didn't have a basement, and I just thought they did some remodeling, and copied and pasted the pool from the rec center. I guess that's how indoor swimming pools were made. So finally I got my ass moving, and, you know, out of there, and the only way out of there was this hallway that said exit in it. For some reason the staircase was gone, or I couldn't find my way out of there again. It was like not there anymore, and there was security, like in a casino, guards like standing on the other side of the door, and I opened the door to get out of there, and this alarm started going off. Security's like, you're in big trouble, you're not supposed to, you know, like it was pulling the fire alarm, like I just pulled the fire alarm for no reason type of trouble. You're not supposed to be, like, alarming the security, by walking through the exit door, and I was like, well, this is the only way out of here. And he's like, well, I guess you have a point there. I mean, he was trying to use my ignorance. Like, if I didn't know any better, I would have gotten in trouble. Kind of like the way cops, like, you know, they'll test you out by saying things like, you know, we can stop and frisk you for no reason, and, you know, they'll try to abuse the law if you don't know the law, and that's what this guy was doing. And I knew that was the only way out, and I was just talking sense into him, and he was just like, okay, well, just never mind the trouble, and he just escorted me down to this arcade, and I started playing Pac-Man, and Pac-Man was first on the screen, and then Pac-Man started going off the screen, and there was masking tape lining the wall, like right above the arcade and lining the wall, and Pac-Man was like going off the screen and into the masking tape, and the little dots were there in the masking tape. And it was like a restaurant. It was like an arcade next to a restaurant, and people were sitting there like eating dinner and in a booth, and I was like standing up over them on the seat, like playing Pac-Man, like I had to move with Pac-Man, like the controller. It was like playing with a regular controller, but on an arcade, and I was like, excuse me, like stepping over these people, trying to like make sure that because I was doing really good in the game, and they weren't thinking anything of it. It was just like, I guess, a normal thing of that restaurant, of those games, to have people like walking around, like the game just comes off the screen, and what causes the person to need to walk around the room to play it. And I don't remember if I died or if I got distracted, but when I was done doing that, I started walking out of there, and it was like an octagon. The hallway went like this, and then it went 45 degrees like this, and then 45 degrees like this, then 45 degrees like this, and I started walking down the hallway, and I'd get to the end of this 45 degrees, and then I'd turn the corner. There was like these rectangular shaped hallway, just like big rectangles, like this, or squares. I mean, squares that were like sticking straight out like this, like around the corner of each like right on the corner of each angle of the octagon. And then I'd go around that corner and I'd see the exact same thing, those things coming around on the corner, and like the same tiles and the same lights on the ceiling. And then I'd walk around that corner and I'd see the same goddamn thing. And it was the only way to go was this one hallway. And every time I came around the corner, it was the same fucking thing. These like bars that were just like growing out off the end of the aisle. Like if I didn't walk fast enough, I'd be like closed in the aisle. And like each time I'd walk around the corner, the bars would be in the same spot as they were the previous time. And just because I looked at them, they'd start growing like this. So I was walking around the corner, and I realized probably the fifth or sixth time that I went around the corner that those bars were moving faster each time, and the only reason they were moving in the first place is because I was looking at them. So I started trying to like walk up against the wall like this, like not looking at them, and I figured maybe me looking at the hallways was what was causing it to be the same every time. And the hallway just kept repeating over and over when I would look. But when I wouldn't look, there'd be these like cubbies in the wall that would have like people staring at me, like that weren't there at all when I was just walking down the hallway, like, you know, looking, like walking down the hallway normally, looking down the hall. It was just a regular wall. And then there'd be these like oval shaped, you know, squares with the corners cut off, shaped like holes in the wall, and the wall was like 5 feet thick with people staring at me, making these like evil ass faces. I never did make it out of Kmart. And that was the last thing I can remember, is people staring at me, making really weird faces. And it seemed like a really vivid dream, and that memory of that dream just stayed with me for the last few days, so I figured I'd explain that. I don't usually have like vivid dreams that, I mean, I've had a shitload of them in my life, but usually I wake up and forget what I'm dreaming. I'm pretty sure it had something to do with the LSD, because I was still tripping when I went to sleep. I was like watching the Cybersonic Dimension while I was going to sleep, and then at some point I just fell asleep. And the first thing I could remember was I had just gotten my keys cut. That might have even been the beginning of the dream, is getting my keys cut. But I had just gotten them cut. Like, I was loaded into the dream with the memory that I'd gotten my keys cut just then, but that wasn't included in the dream, the actual part where I was at Ace Hardware getting my keys cut. I just knew that that's what I just did. So it just loaded me into the dream with, like, these memories of what I just did. Dreams are so fucking weird. LSD is so fucking fascinating. Like, it's the only drug I've ever done that the appeal increases to. Gets more interesting, more intricate, and more enjoyable. And like all the other drugs, like usually you do them and you grow tolerance to them, and you know you have to take more and more of them, and the effect of it like is less and less. LSD is just the other way around. It's the effects get better, they get more intricate, and it's like gaining experience, like leveling up a character in a game. Whereas like with other drugs, it's like you're already the highest level and you're like losing experience as you play the game, you know, as you continue taking that drug. So yeah, and some of the things that I was seeing during the trip was I was tripping really hard, like for about 2 hours, and I only took three and a half. What I did though is I have five different kinds, and I cut each square in half from each kind of acid, like diagonally in half, and took just a bunch of triangles. Except for one triangle, I cut two triangles of the same kind in half. And they seem to have synergistic effects. 5 different batches of dose. And that's the way I'm going to do it every time now when I have different kinds. And that's something I suggest trying is when you have different sheets of dose, try mixing them together. Try mixing the sheets together of dose. And it has a stronger effect than if you just take the one kind. It's crazy. At least it appears to. I'll have to try that next time. The music was completely insane sounding. My friend was seeing he told me something that he saw that I was really jealous of that I didn't see. And that was that he saw the room was like, had like webs in it everywhere. And in the music, he could see the music, like the bass and the music, like bouncing the webs. Like the room was like webbed off in another dimension. And I was like, fuck, I didn't see any of that. What I saw was crazy ass patterns all over the ceilings and walls. And, when I looked at my friend, he looked like Stephen Hawking, Leo, Jack Nicholson, John Woods, Ryan O'Dell. He looked like a whole bunch of people that I've known and seen before. Like he was just like fading, and he was going from like his age was like ranging between like 20 years. Like I could see him like getting older and then getting younger and then getting older and like morphing into all these people, like famous actors and friends that I've had in the past. And I've seen that before, but it was like really intense this time. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about dreams, that dream, and LSD, and its undying fascination, amazing astonishment. I personally think LSD is by far the best of the hallucinogens. And, you know, of the ones that I've done, particularly mescaline, psilocybin, DMT, LSD, DXM, diphenhydronate. Those are the main ones that I've done. And yeah, LSD is just way above all of them. It's just has... I mean, not to say the other ones aren't any good. They're a lot of fun. It's just they don't... LSD is just way better than any of those. So yeah, I think I'm done talking about all that.